there, and welcome to Oaklandside 510. I'm Tasneem Raja. Each week on the 510, we catch you up on some of the biggest news in Oakland, take you behind the headlines, and preview cool events around town. Today's Deep Dive: how Oaklandside fights for your access to local information, even if that means suing public agencies. And yeah, we have done that a time or two. And headlines on whether Waymo might be coming to Oakland, a congregation's push to save Our Lady of Lourdes Catholic Church by Lake Merritt, the sad closure of Edith's Pies Bakery, and some nosh suggestions for pairings between local parks and takeout restaurants that I think you might want to check out. Finally, Azucena Racia helps you plan your weekend. Okay, last thing, we've heard from about 70 of you about what you like and don't like about this podcast experiment. I would love to get us to a solid 100 people answering our super simple survey so we can figure out whether and how we can keep this whole thing going. We need just 30 more of you to respond. Link to the survey is at the top of the show notes. All right, let's get this party started. I'm here with Darwin BondGraham to talk through some of our latest headlines. How you doing, Darwin?
I think I'm okay.
Yeah, I know we all think we're okay. Okay, talk to me. We reported some transportation news recently that I suspect people will have some really mixed feelings about.
Yeah, we just reported about the possibility of autonomous self-driving cars finally making their way to Oakland. We learned that Waymo, this is one of the robo-taxi companies, the one that's owned by Google's parent company, Alphabet, it's been in contact with Oakland officials about potentially expanding here.
Yeah, I was surprised by this news. How did we find out about this, and what do we know about these conversations?
I think one of our reporters was talking with the city council member, Zach Unger, and Councilmember Unger told us that he happened to be speaking with a Waymo representative in April who said the company was thinking about coming to Oakland. Both Waymo and Tesla have reached out to Oakland's airport about the possibility of serving passengers there. So that's confirmed also. Mm-hmm. The interesting thing is that unlike San Francisco, where you see these driverless cars regularly, moving around the city, Waymo isn't currently permitted to operate fully autonomous vehicles in the East Bay.
Okay.
Yeah, they'll need approval from the California Department of Motor Vehicles and the California Public Utilities Commission and the Port of Oakland if they want to serve the airport.
Okay, now we know driverless cars can freak people out. What do we know about safety?
I'll just say right off the bat that cars are pretty unsafe, whether humans are behind the wheel or robots. Last year, a Waymo car did hit a cyclist in San Francisco, and there have been other incidents with other companies also. These vehicles have been known to randomly pause in the middle of the street, creating traffic jams. There's other concerns too. Local advocates like the organization Bikey Spay, they're worried that autonomous vehicles might take away riders from public transit or could potentially replace trips that, wouldn't have otherwise been made by walking or biking. So basically, more cars on the road.
Got it. Okay, switching gears, pun intended. Our schools reporter, Ashley McBride, checked in on how Oakland schools are thinking about artificial intelligence.
Robo-cars, AI, brave new world. This story's a fascinating one. Oakland Unified issued a bare bones policy last March that basically leaves it up to individual teachers and principals to decide whether students can use AI in their work. It just says that if they do allow it, students are required to cite the artificial intelligence. We found teachers are all over the map on this policy. Some are embracing it strategically. For example, at Latitude High School in Fruitvale, computer science students used ChatGPT to debug some code they wrote for a math video game that they're creating for local elementary school kids.
That's cool.
Yeah, but whenever students haven't been assigned to use it, the school uses software to block ChatGPT access.
Right.
Ashley spoke with the school's dean of instruction. The dean told her, quote, making sure that students are using their own brains and learning the skills in the first place feels very crucial.
Look, the math video games, that sounds really cool. Actually sounds like an interesting use of ChatGPT. That said, I'm sure others in OUSD are more skeptical.
Yeah, that's right. Some are more skeptical. At Oakland Tech, some history and English teachers have formed their own research group to look into AI. They're worried AI hampers critical thinking. One history teacher told our reporter, Ashley, quote, "A computer is a tool. You can draft your essay and I can put comments on it, whereas AI, the way many students are using it, is to do their thinking for them." Some teachers are going back to old school methods, handwritten essays during class and oral presentations. These are things that can't be hacked using AI. The district says more comprehensive policy is in the works, but right now teachers are basically on their own figuring out what responsible use of AI looks like.
Thanks, Darwin. Thanks, Ashley. I'm just hoping all of this is sorted out by the time my kid reaches grade school. Fingers crossed. Darwin, moving on. Can you tell us what's going on with Our Lady of Lourdes Catholic Church near Lake Merritt?
Yeah, this is about a community fighting to save its spiritual home. The Oakland Catholic Diocese filed for bankruptcy in 2023 to deal with around 300 lawsuits from survivors of clergy sexual abuse. As part of a bankruptcy plan that involves paying out $165 million to survivors, the diocese is also realigning churches. That means maybe merging some of them, closing others. Even without the abuse settlements, this was coming because Catholic church attendance has dropped by half in Oakland since about 2010. Our Lady of Lourdes, which has been around since 1922, could be clustered with another church in Piedmont. That means they'd share a priest and administration. The church sits on some pretty valuable real estate next to Lake Merritt. People have probably seen it if they've walked around the lake. So parishioners worry it could be sold to developers.
So how do the parishioners at Lady of Lourdes feel about all of this?
It sounds like they're determined to prevent it. This past Sunday, they held a prayer walk where they circled the block 7 times. Our reporter, Jose Fermoso, lays out in a story he wrote about this that this is a diverse, multi-generational congregation. It's LGBTQ inclusive and has strong social justice traditions. There are families who've been there for decades, young couples just starting out, people who drive from other cities. This place really matters to the congregation. I highly recommend people read Jose's full story and check out Florence Middleton's photos.
Shifting to restaurant news, I know we have a tough closure to report.
Yeah, unfortunately, Oakland is losing Edith's Pie, the beloved bakery on 22nd Street. In an Instagram post, the owners said they're planning to close this autumn. They said they're down at minimum 31%, with many days now averaging about 20 people. The owners, Mike Raskin and Jeffrey Wright, said they've tried everything over the past 5.5 years, but they feel overwhelmed by what they called chaotic and impulsive changes in the current economic and political landscape. They hope to stay open through Thanksgiving, but even that is uncertain.
Okay, lastly, Darwin, I want to talk about picnic season because we know our friends at the Nosh team put together a great guide pairing East Bay parks with nearby takeout options. Can you give us a couple of the pairings from their guide?
Yeah, Nosh suggests grabbing some Laotian food, maybe some yellow curry noodles, papaya salad from the Sap Avenue on Piedmont. Take that up the hill to Mountain View Cemetery, sunset views, the bay,
Nice.
Check it out.
Yep.
And they suggest bringing Zachary's thin crust pizza to the Morecambe Rose Garden. They don't recommend deep dish for outdoor eating, though.
Sure, fair enough.
And they say Skyline Community Market in the Oakland Hills is perfect for grabbing picnic supplies before heading to Roberts Regional Park.
Yeah, this one, I've actually done that. It is a good pairing.
Yeah. The full guide from Nosh has pairings in Berkeley and Richmond and at least one other Oakland spot. So check it out.
Yeah, great concept. Perfect timing for this warm September weather. Thank you for walking us through all of this, Darwin.
Definitely.
And Darwin's going to stick around for our deep dive into government transparency. Today, we're diving into how the Oaklandside fights for the public's right to know. From suing county officials to challenging laws that make journalism harder, our newsroom has been fighting for local transparency ever since we launched 5 years ago. To help us understand why these fights matter and how we handle them, I'm joined by Darwin BondGraham, our news editor, and Jose Fermoso, our road safety reporter. Both of them have been very involved on this front. Darwin, Jose, thanks for joining me.
Hi.
Hey.
Okay, Darwin, I want to start with you. Can you lay out what our reporters should have easy access to under California law and U.S. press freedom laws?
Yeah, zooming in from the highest levels, there's a long history of press freedoms and a tradition of the press covering the government as a watchdog. That goes all the way back to the U.S. Constitution, 230 whatever years ago when it was signed, even before that. But more recently, in terms of access to records, it really gets started in California in the 1950s with the Brown Act, which forced governments to hold their meetings in public and make records broadly available. 1966, we saw the federal government pass the Freedom of Information Act, FOIA as it's called. California kind of copied that in 1968 with the California Public Records Act, saying, hey, government records belong to the people, and the people should be able to inspect them. 1996, Oakland passed its own Sunshine Ordinance. It's sort of a combination of the Brown Act and the California Public Records Act, but for the city. And there's just a general tradition in this country of the courts, public hearings, public spaces, and conduct of the government. This stuff is open, and the press is expected to cover it.
Darwin, how well are these laws holding up?
Unfortunately, some government agencies treat transparency laws more as suggestions than requirements, and there isn't a robust system to force compliance. We've seen this repeatedly. Agencies that stonewall records requests or miss deadlines or simply just ignore journalists asking for information that the public has a legal right to see. When agencies don't comply, sometimes filing a lawsuit in court is the only way to enforce the public's right to know. The downside to that is that lawsuits are expensive and time-consuming. It's not just about us as journalists. When we win these fights, we're establishing precedents that help all residents, all citizens, all people of California get the information they need.
Okay, I want to dig into some specific examples that we've seen of governments stonewalling. In 2023, our newsroom sued the Alameda County Registrar of Voters over the way that office was sharing information about the 2022 election. Now, Jose, you were leading our reporting on the Registrar's office that year. Why were we unhappy with them?
Well, the 2022 election was a disaster for the Registrar's office. They made significant errors in counting ranked choice ballots. There were problems with voter education, and frankly, the public deserved to know how these mistakes happened. And these weren't the first problems. 2 years earlier, the Registrar's office lost more than 100 ballots from people who cast their votes at Mills College. That led to recriminations from voting advocacy and legal organizations like Common Cause. So by the time the 2022 election came around, Alameda County voters were emailing us to dig deeper into the dysfunction and really find out what was going on. So we filed public records requests asking for information about the election problems, requests for recounts, internal communications, and just all of this was basic transparency stuff that should be standard and that the registrar should have provided himself from the beginning.
I want to pause for just a second. What is a public records request?
Yeah, Public Records Act requests. These are the bread and butter of reporting in California. The state law says that everyone, not just reporters, you don't even have to be, a resident of California. It says everyone has a right to inspect California's public records. We file them as journalists a lot, and we do that because government workers often have no incentive to just hand over stuff, but they're legally compelled to hand us stuff when we put it in one of these formal requests.
Right.
Public records are pretty much everything: reports, emails, appointment calendars, 911 audio, data. There are some exceptions, so there's some kinds of records that are excluded and we can't just get. But for the most part, the presumption is that a public record is a public record and it needs to be handed over. The Oaklandside newsroom files dozens of these things every month.
Okay, Jose, back to you and the Alameda County Registrar's office. So going back to 2022, I remember we were filing a lot of those requests to try to better understand what just happened with that election. What happened next?
The registrar's office just ignored our requests for weeks. They wouldn't respond, wouldn't provide the documents, and they seemed to think they could just wait us out. So in February 2023, we filed a lawsuit. And guess what? Suddenly their lawyers started cooperating and agreed to provide the records we had been asking for. And this wasn't just about one story, really. It was about sending a clear message that the public and the journalists who serve them expect complete transparency from their election officials.
Darwin, can you help people understand the costs of taking on a fight like that in terms of dollars and cents, but also our time?
Yeah, the costs are pretty considerable. To look at the lawsuit that we filed against the registrar, we settled that lawsuit in 2023. We settled it relatively quickly, but even with a lawsuit that settles fast like this, we're still talking about tens of thousands of dollars in legal bills that, both parties end up having to pay. And, there's many hours of time spent by reporters and attorneys and government officials, like dealing with the conflict between a newsroom and a county agency like this. So it's considerable time and money.
Can you say more about the costs on the agency's end?
Yeah, sometimes the cost can be really big. So earlier this year, the city of Oakland settled a case regarding a pretty simple Public Records Act request from a private citizen and the Alameda County Taxpayers Association. The city ignored the request and they ended up having to pay about $200,000 in attorney's fees because they didn't hand over records.
Jose, along those lines, you took on a very different kind of transparency fight this year when you sued Alameda County again over its sideshow law. Can you tell us what was going on there?
So this was about a law that went way too far. In August 2023, Alameda County passed an ordinance making it illegal to be a spectator within 200 feet of a sideshow. On its face, that might sound reasonable. The county's looking to discourage people from attending these events because they're dangerous. And when people get close and live stream them, it builds interest.
Right.
We know this. But the way the law was written, it would have criminalized basic journalism practice. I cover road safety and transportation, and sideshows are both an Oakland cultural phenomenon and a major public safety issue. But this law would have made it illegal for me to report on these events in person. The county said the law was about discouraging sideshows, but we argued that it was also about undermining oversight. How can we hold authorities accountable for how they handle sideshows if we can't be there to witness what happens?
Right. Jose, I think it would help if you can paint a picture for our listeners. Like, what does it actually look like when you're trying to report on a sideshow? What do you need to be able to do?
Well, you have to be there in person to understand what's really happening. You need to see the crowd dynamics, how many people are there, whether the activity is contained, or if it's becoming dangerous or destructive. You literally need to smell the burning rubber of the car tires to know whether that's affecting residents. You really need to hear the noise levels. You need to talk to people, including the participants, to find out why they're drawn to these events. And critically, you need to observe how law enforcement responds. How many officers show up and what are the tactics that they use? Are they making arrests or are they just monitoring? Are they engaging in abusive behavior or reckless chases? You need to be close enough to read a badge number maybe. So that police response is a huge part of the story that Oakland residents deserve to understand.
Right. And this law was going to prevent you from being able to do that?
Yeah, well, the police could easily mistake a resident taking video of an event to document the impact on their family and their block for someone who's a sideshow participant live streaming the event. It's totally possible that the cops wouldn't believe them. And it's really important to say this, especially now, given that we are in a time in this country where the Supreme Court appears to have sanctioned racial profiling, that the situation could get really explosive.
Right.
So these days, it doesn't matter if I'm a known journalist or if I'm waving my press pass around, or even if somebody may know me from my reporting here. We've seen journalists from CNN and other major news organizations get pushed around in the middle of protests by cops just this year.
Yeah.
And, to bring it back a little bit to myself, I am a Mexican-American journalist who, even though I'm a very chill and respectful and professional person, I've already been profiled in my own neighborhood numerous times in Oakland, simply for walking to the grocery store. So you can imagine what could happen if I'm near a sideshow. And here, there's something important that needs to be noted. The county law only covers unincorporated areas of Alameda County. It does not cover Oakland proper, as Oakland does not have the 200-yard restriction. But Unincorporated areas touch intersections with a lot of Oakland sideshows, including in the hills near Skyline Boulevard. What we don't know is whether an Oakland police officer has ever arrested people inside that 200-yard perimeter by mistake, and whether they may have done so illegally or dangerously as well.
So, Jose, you decided to sue the county to be able to keep reporting on sideshows in person. Talk us through what happened next.
We connected with the First Amendment Coalition and their attorney, David Loy, who has represented other cases around our freedom of speech. He interviewed me about my beat and the reporting I did on sideshows. Then I had to write a letter based on my experience as a reporter that was eventually submitted to the court alongside the legal complaint. We lost at the district court, but then appealed to the Ninth Circuit.
First Amendment Coalition, based right here in Oakland, by the way. So, Jose, I know you have some good news to share on this fight.
Yes, so the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals ruled unanimously in our favor 2 weeks ago. The court said the law violated the First Amendment, and the case, if the county appeals, will have to be judged based on the law's potential First Amendment violations. Alameda County and its lawyers had claimed that the law was just a public safety measure that had nothing to do with the First Amendment. In the ruling, Judge Holly Thomas wrote that journalists, quote, must observe sideshows in order to record them, unquote, and report on them. She even made this great analogy about how the law was so broad it could apply to Girl Scout troops selling cookies who happened to be near a sideshow.
Right.
This decision was made by a 3-judge panel, and according to my attorney David Loy last week, the county decided to file a petition requesting that the entire Ninth Circuit rehear the appeal. The main impact is that for now, I still can't go out and report on the sideshows.
Okay, hopefully that changes soon. Thanks, Jose. Darwin, another recent challenge to our ability to report just happened in the last few weeks. Can you tell us about what's going on with Oakland police and radio scanners?
Yeah, this is a decision that's been in the works for a while, but it started really happening this month in September, and it's a huge blow to transparency and public safety reporting. So for decades, anyone could just listen in to the Oakland Police radio communications using a scanner or one of the online streaming websites. But the Oakland Police Department decided, with seemingly no public input, to encrypt all their radio traffic. This is going to cut off public access. And the police department says it's to protect people's privacy in response to some memo that the California Department of Justice put out 5 years ago, and that it's also about officer safety. But they're really eliminating a crucial transparency tool.
Right. Darwin, can you walk us through past examples of where we've used these scanners in our reporting?
Basically, anytime there's a big public event, like a protest or a parade or a concert, and especially when there are emergencies like fires, high-speed car chases, basically any big breaking news situation. In 2020, when all the big protests were going off, we used the scanner a lot. There were nights when people were looting stores and burning buildings in some parts of the city. There were groups of people taking advantage of the police being overwhelmed by crowds. There were also instances where claims of violence were exaggerated by the police. We relied on the scanner in 2020 to investigate police claims that protesters were preparing Molotov cocktails to hurl them at the police at a protest. That protest ended with the police shooting less lethals and tear gassing people because of those claims. Those claims were entirely false, and the police scanner was a key tool that we used to investigate that.
Okay, looking ahead, guys, what is the Oaklandside currently working on when it comes to government transparency?
Yeah, we've got a few irons in the fire. Jose's lawsuit around the rights of journalists to report on sideshows, that's ongoing. We're also doing some reporting right now on elected officials' lack of compliance with the Public Records Act. I don't want to spoil the story, but we're closely scrutinizing each Oakland City Council member's record. Are they and are their staff following the law and making basic public records like calendars available on request? We are auditing.
Absolutely. I know our reporters, Natalie Ornstein and her fellow City Hall reporter, Eli Wolf, have been digging into this for a while now. Jose, what can Oakland residents do to support press freedom and government transparency?
I would say first, support nonprofit journalism.
Sure. We would love that.
When we get access to government records, we publish them so everyone can see what's happening. We support news organizations willing to fight these legal battles. As we mentioned earlier, litigation is expensive, but it's often the only way to enforce transparency laws. And I was just thinking, I used to take out quarters out of my allowance as a little kid to pay for the Oakland Tribune and the New York Times. So even though I know it's not easy and times are hard, it's definitely worth it. Second, I would say call out your elected officials when they're being secretive or unresponsive to basic transparency requests. Third, I would say learn about your rights under the California Public Records Act. You don't have to be a journalist to file records requests or attend public meetings. There are a lot of sources that I speak to here in the city that actually submit a lot of these requests themselves. And then when they get that information, sometimes they'll send it to me. So that's a really great resource. Ultimately, I think we have to remember that transparency isn't just about catching wrongdoing. It's about understanding how government works so that you, me, everybody can participate effectively.
Absolutely. These fights for transparency, it's not always big, sexy stories. They don't always make headlines, but they're essential for keeping democracy working at the local level. Darwin BondGraham and Jose Fermoso, everyone. Thanks, guys.
Thanks.
Thanks so much.
You can find all of their reporting and the documents and stories that we've obtained through these legal battles at oaklandside.org. Coming up, Azucena Racia and weekend events in Oakland. I'm here with Azucena Racia, Oaklandside's arts and community reporter, to help you plan your weekend. How are you doing, Azucena?
Hi, Tasneem. Happy to be here.
Hey, by the way, I just want to let listeners know, by the time you're hearing this, it may be past the weekend. You may be hearing about events that are already done. Just so you know, Azucena publishes a whole roundup of these events every Tuesday afternoon. So if you want to know what's going on in advance, check out oaklandside.org. You might even subscribe to our newsletter. Hey, let's get into it. Let's start with Friday night. What's going on?
So Friday night, we have the Studio 8 Film Festival at Shapeshifter Cinema. The San Francisco Art Institute shuttered in 2022, and its alumni banded together to form a nonprofit dedicated to showcasing their work. The screening in Oakland will include experimental films that explore themes of performance, queer, cross-cultural identity, and political reckoning.
That's Friday, September 19th at Shapeshifters Cinema on a sliding scale. Tell us about Saturday.
Saturday has two really cool community events. First up is Urban Peace Movement's second annual That's Oakland Baby block party, and this time is in West Oakland. The organization invests in community gatherings to help create safer neighborhoods. The yearly block party provides free wellness services, entertainment, games, and it sort of serves as a mixer between residents and business owners.
That sounds great. That is Saturday, September 20th, starting at noon. It's free, but you do need to RSVP online. Okay, Azu, anything else on Saturday?
Yeah, later on Saturday evening, the East Bay Photo Collective is hosting their annual fundraiser and community celebration. The collective was founded in 2017 as a way to build community for photographers, and they run one of the few remaining traditional darkrooms in Oakland. The event includes a print auction, bingo, raffles, local beer and wine, Mexican food from Tacos El Melon food truck, and a chance to mingle with other photography fans.
One of the last remaining traditional darkrooms in Oakland. That's very cool. Saturday, September 20th at 5 p.m. at Show Studios. Looking ahead to next week, what should we be keeping our eyes on?
Yeah, on Tuesday, we have a screening of The Lemurian Candidate at the Grand Lake Theater. It's from filmmaker and Cal grad Casey Cooper Johnson and filmmaker Antonetta Castrati. The two are married, and their latest film is a psychedelic buddy comedy featuring three friends on a backpacking trip on Mount Shasta. According to Cooper, the film is dedicated to a friend from Berkeley who struggled with issues related to mental health.
That's cool. That's Tuesday, September 23rd at 7 p.m. at the Grand Lake Theater. And I know you have some exciting news about another big concert coming to town later this year.
Yes, Tame Impala is coming to the Oakland Arena this November. This is a project of Australian artist Kevin Parker and is touring to promote his latest album, Deadbeat.
All right, we keep you in the know. These shows are Friday, November 14th and Saturday, November 15th, 8 p.m. at Oakland Arena. Check the website for ticket prices. We will link to Azucena's full events roundup in the show notes with all the details. And remember, that roundup publishes Tuesday afternoons. So if you don't want to wait till the podcast comes out, you can always check it out online. Thanks so much, Azucena.
Thank you, Tasneem.
We did it. That's the show. Thank you for listening to Oaklandside 510. You know, this is an experiment. We've been trying this thing out for 10 episodes, and then we're going to decide whether and how to keep it going. You can help us figure that out. I'm hoping to get to 100 people giving us feedback through our extremely short and sweet survey. We need just 30 more. I'm hoping that you are going to be one of them. Thank you to all my early birds who've already responded. If you shared your email, look out for an email from me saying thank you sometime in the next few days. Okay, also, everyone, please consider supporting the work we do here at the Oaklandside by becoming a member. Our reporting is free for you and all your Oakland neighbors to check out, but it costs real money to cover Oakland with the depth and attention our amazing city deserves. Over 4,000 of your Oakland neighbors keep the Oaklandside going by donating an average of $10 a month. I need you to join them. If your organization would like to advertise on this podcast, we want to talk to you. That email address is editors@oaklandside.org. Thank you to our news editor, Darwin BondGraham, for walking us through the headlines. Thank you to Darwin and to our road safety reporter, Jose Fermoso, for breaking down how our newsroom fights for your access to public information. Thank you to our arts reporter, Azucena Racia, for keeping us in the know on weekend activities and upcoming events in Oakland. Thank you for listening. And thank you to every one of the 4,000 Oaklandside members who keep this work going by donating around $10 a month. This show was produced and engineered by Callie Rhodes. Esther Kaplan was our editor. I'm Tasneem Raja. See you next week.